Okay, I got it figured out how to put some light in that box. I drilled a couple of holes in the cement board. I drilled one with a hole saw, and that didn't go too well. It pretty much destroyed the hole saw. I got through that one, but I couldn't get through this one. So I kind of started the holes with a hole saw to get them marked out, and then I took my rotozip tool and I took a drywall bit and I was able to cut through that one, but I took 3 bits to go through it. I tried it on one of the other holes over here and it wasn't working too good, so I guess I'll wait till tomorrow and go to town and see if I can get a carbide bit that's made for cutting tile and stuff. Anyway, I've got mount here figured out for the light bulbs, and these are little ceramic sockets that I got to hold some ceramic bulbs for heat bulbs, and they're actually a pretty nice little socket. I'm pretty impressed with them. They're got all brass fittings in them. They're all screwed together. They're a really nice socket. I got them from China. They have this little mounting plate on them. You can see this was a trial. What I took was little cans, empty cans that the powder came in from Eastwood, and I just set it in here and spun it around, put a mark on it to the depth that I wanted, and then cut it with a knife, and then trimmed it up a little bit with the sheet metal shears, and then I cut some tabs on it and set it down in the hole, so it kind of goes down in this. Then I pulled some of the tabs out for a trial to use to go down through the hole and bend up on the other side. That worked out pretty good, so this one wound up being pretty short when I was done. It was just kind of a trial, so I went and got another one and did the same thing too, but I've got longer ears on it here where it's bent down. Got it screwed into the cement board with number 4 sheet metal screw, and the bulb's going to protrude down a little bit into the cavity, but it's not going to be near as bad as what mounting it to the inside would be. So here's the little ears here sticking down. I pilot drilled those with a, 3/32 drill bit, and then screwed the number 4 sheet metal screws in there. They're just 1/4-inch sheet metal screws, and they work okay. You can over torque them real easy and spin them in that cement board, but they hold pretty tight if you're careful. And that's going to be just down below the level of the sheetrock on the top when I'm done. And I've got little mounting blocks in here. I can mount the wires in. I think that's going to work out okay. I'll go ahead and make up 4 more of those, or 3 more of those, and then I'll have them ready for tomorrow. These are the little cans that I'm using for housing, and like I said, they're just a hot coat, powder coat can. Took a hole saw, drilled a hole out in the top of them. The large size of that housing is too big to go through it, but the small size goes through it. And then I took these are all held in with little teeny machine screws in there and nuts on the inside. Well, the nuts spun on them, so it's not a real practical way to get in there. I don't have a nut driver that can get in there to get those, and it's tough to do, so I mixed up some 5-minute epoxy and just dabbed in there around those nuts to encapsulate them, or to hold them in there so I can take them out. And then this little flange right here, I reverse that flange, which will hold this ceramic socket up above the bottom of the can. This is one that I was trial fitting with here, and see, that end of it just fits down in the can pretty good. And this tab can go on either way. If I put it on like that, then that holds the top up just a little bit higher in the can. These cans all have glue on them to hold those labels on. I just took some lacquer thinner and cleaned that one can off. I don't know whether that's totally necessary or not. I suppose it'll get hot in there, they'll probably smoke. Go ahead and fix up a couple more of them now. Well, I got my last 2 holes cut. Went to town and got a tile cutting bit for the rotozip. I wasn't sure whether that one was going to fit or not, because it was 1/8 inch and they have 5/32 and 1/4 inch, and I couldn't remember what size I had, but I bought an 1/8 inch one. It turned out to fit, and it went through that stuff really good. You can see it's a carbide bit, and it's got a lot of serrations on there. and then I ate right through that cement board without any trouble. I did have a little bit of trouble, and it's the same thing I have with routers pretty regularly, is the bit slips in the collet. It seems like no matter how tight you get that collet, the bit will slip in it. Well, it would walk out, and when it did, it'd get to the shank portion of that, and then it'd start hopping around and stuff. But you could see there'd be a tendency to want to go too fast. So you just have to take your time going through this and let it cut. And it went through it real fine, no problem at all. I got my dust collector hose over here, turned it on and held it up, and that took care of most of the dust. It goes right around and comes right out and goes right in the dust collector, so there's very little dust generated. I do have air cleaner turned on here just to help keep everything cleared up, and leave it on for a little while to pick up any of the dust. Now these are the spiral bits, drywall bits. This is what I tried at first, and they would cut, but I broke a couple of them, and a couple of them came out of the collet, and it didn't seem like you could go very far with them before they did dull, and they just glow red hot, so you know they're getting hot. Well, they would work in a pinch, but that dedicated masonry bit worked pretty darn good, tile bit. Those holes are in. Now I can go ahead and put those other two light fixtures in. I got the insulation in. It's actually way thicker than it needs to be. I've used the whole bats in there. It'll compress down. Would have been just as well to split it in half like I did the other side there with this smaller studs in there. The light fixtures are wired up. I took some high temp wire and cut short leads off of them to run from each one. And then I got some THN wire to run through and spliced them into them. They only had black in town, a roll of black of 14 gauge. I could have used 16 gauge, but they didn't have any 16 gauge. I got some 14 gauge, but all they had was black. I've got some of these tabs, these heat shrink marking tabs, and I marked the lines, the line voltage of the line side with those, and then just left the common side bare. Also got some of this sleeve that I run on. Some of the pieces I run them through where they go through the joints, like this one goes through the stud here in the sheet, the cement board. So I run sleeve on it. I also put some RTV around that opening to protect it, and it goes over underneath the opening in the studs there. I run some sleeve around it as well as some RTV. So it's all wired up. It's wired in parallel, so that if any one of the light fixtures goes out or the lights go out, the rest of them will stay working. I'll go ahead and put the sheetrock on there and go ahead and glue it up and screw it up or screw it down, whichever comes first. Well, there's the box closed in. Not an oven yet because I don't have the controller on it and I don't have a door on it. But I got 5 sides done. Left side, right side, and back side done with sheetrock, and the top with sheetrock. Bottom has 3/4 inch plywood on it. Lights wired in. The heat elements all wired in. I got to figure out how to make a door. I got a piece of piano hinge to use for a door hinge. Of course, it's not going to be wide enough because if that sheetrock on there, that widens it out too far to get good purchase into the metal with the screws. I kind of screwed up a little bit probably with building this without a plan. If I had a plan, I probably could have put the hinges in and had them ready for a door. It's all closed in, so you can't get behind that panel to put nuts on the back side of bolts to put hinges on. Now I suppose I could drill those out and put nut zerts in there. That may be what I do. But I'm going to have to shim that out a little bit anyway. It's not quite flush with the top and the bottom. Although I suppose a gasket, a door gasket, would probably work, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have something to cover up those cutouts in those studs. So now I'm going to need to build a stand to get that up in the air to where it's a working height, so we can get access to it and work it at a comfortable level and move it around. It's must weigh 300 pounds or so now. It's maybe more than that, I don't know. It's pretty damn heavy. I've got some big casters I can put underneath it so we can move it around. Anyway, that's the box. It's kind of rough around the edges. That plywood I got was kind of dunnage from the lumber yard. It's all he had left, and it was broken edges and rocks embedded in it and stuff like that. So it's kind of ugly looking on the edges, doesn't fit up quite right. So I'll probably get some joint compound and kind of dummy that up a little bit and maybe get something to put over the edges to trim those out a little better, but it's functional the way it is. That's just mainly for aesthetics. Maybe keep the edges from getting boogered up anymore. If we had a door on it and the electrical hooked up on it, it'd be ready to go.